What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Good Guy, Bad Guy. I'm Daniel Cormier. That is my man, Chael Sonnen. Chael, how you doing, my brother? Hey, listen.
You don't care. You don't care how I'm doing. That is the most insincere. How are you doing?
I call you constantly. I literally think that when it's time to do the show, you put me off a block, and in the moment the show's done, you block me to make sure that I can't try to strike up as good a friendship with you as I would like, because as you know, you are the bad guy.
Not only is that not true, I name drop DC. When you call, I make sure someone says, "Oh, I don't have my glasses." Somebody grab the phone so that they see that I'm connecting with Daniel Cormier. It's a big deal. Kevin Keeney loves when I talk to him. And by the way, can I get right into something? They put out a press release, and it was like an apology piece for our Olympic team. The first time in 56 years we have not brought home a gold medal. Excuse me. That team did an outstanding job. I have never seen wrestling at this high of a level. The freestyler that beat Spencer Lee might be the best freestyler I've ever seen. I generally don't talk like that. I'll say, hey, he's a really good wrestler. That guy was specifically freestyle. He would turn you. He understood tilts. He understood parterre position. He understood how to get reversals from bottom. They're putting out an apology. Team USA did an awesome job. I could not have been prouder to be a fan. And I'm not a prude about these things. I don't, hey, attaboy, you guys went out there and tried. We won all sorts of medals. We won all sorts of matches. I believe we unofficially finished third as a team. I'm not sorry for any of it.
You know, we will get into that, Chael, because I got a lot to say, and I think I'm gonna come up as the bad guy on that side because I was a little disappointed. But we will get to that later in the show. We have. I know. It feels like I know it feels like I'm burying the lead. It's as important to us as it is. That's why it's in the show. What's important to most, Chael, is UFC 305 this weekend. And that's Izzy and Dricus Du Plessis.
They're fighting. They're fighting on pay-per-view.
They are, yes. And we have to get to them first before we can play our childish games with the amateur wrestling. So, Bad Blood. Right? Bad Blood. Dricus Du Plessis, South Africa. Izzy, Lagos, Nigeria. They hate each other. It is rooted in heritage in where they came from. Du Plessis says he's the first true African champion because he lives there, he was born there, he trains there. He doesn't do anything different but train there. Adesanya says we had to flee our country in order to get our dreams. It's a very, very dark. Hey, it's so bad that we are on our weigh-in show on Friday. We're doing the most uncomfortable rivalries in UFC history. While this is uncomfortable, Chael, it does have my interest peaked. How excited are you to watch these two finally settle this in the way that they can't settle?
Daniel, I really like how you just set that up. I got a degree in sociology. Sociology doesn't go around bragging about their sociology degree, but I can discuss race with you. It's a very sensitive topic. What these two guys are going after, black, white, still makes people uncomfortable. The media loves this. The media loves these quotes. We have never had a feud this hot, but people don't want to touch it. They do not want to do a piece on it. They do not want to weigh in. They don't know where those landmines are. And it's like, guys, what these guys are fighting about, this is unprecedented stuff. You have a white man and a black man arguing who is the true African. This melts airwaves. You want to talk about a feud. This heat is so hot, it's almost as though the UFC pulled some media. When these guys got face-to-face, the night that Dricus Du Plessis became the #1 contender by beating Robert Whittaker, that was so hot at that press conference. That did clicks and views everywhere. But Daniel, no media members weighed in. They just put it out there. They did not want to share their interpretation of it. And you know what? I understand that. This is sticky stuff, man.
It's hard to really say because you don't want to say the wrong thing because it's so easy to offend people on either side of the coin, right? But Du Plessis, while I thought initially when he said it, I thought he would kind of walk it back, right? Because of Usman and because of Ngannou and because of Izzy. He's not walking it back. He's standing on that. He's standing on his idea that he's the only true African champion. I don't know that I'd agree. I think that those guys were the three kings of African descent that went to the top of the world. But for me, more importantly than all of that, right? I want to see the fights. Because if you would have told me, Chael, before all of this, right, when Dricus Du Plessis became a guy that started to become valuable in the middleweight division, before all of this stuff that makes it so hot, that makes it so uncomfortable, I can seriously say to you, I wasn't very interested in those two guys fighting.
Yep.
Now, though, chill. I am so interested in these two fighting because there's something there. For me, I love great fighters fighting each other. But when there's a little bit extra, that is what draws me in as a fan, as someone that is in the sport. And this one, this weekend, has two of the best middleweights in the world, but they also have that bad blood, and it makes it fun.
Well, it's wildly important that our viewers understand what these guys are fighting for. Like, it's not to sell a pay-per-view that we discuss this topic. When you know what a guy's motivation is, Israel Adesanya has done his finest work when it's personal. As a matter of fact, the worst performance he's put forward is against Sean Strickland, and the only thing that was missing was personal feud. He didn't have a problem with Sean when that fight happened. He wasn't really looking at Sean. Sean was ranked number 6. They hadn't gone at the top 5 for a title contender in a while. It's a last-minute replacement. Izzy was a 6-1 favorite. When that fight was over, Dana wanted to do that rematch. In fact, he offered Izzy an immediate rematch. He said no. He just never had heat with Sean. He tried to get it, and he tried to find it. It just wasn't there. When he has something personal, he called out Yoel Romero. Do you know how crazy that is? A tall, skinny kickboxer from New Zealand wants to fight an Olympic wrestling medalist from Cuba, but it was personal. He told Dana, he said, hey, man, I got into this business because there's guys that I want to fight. Don't hold me back just because I'm champion. I don't care what Yoel's record is. Here's what he did. Here's what he said. I want to fight him, and I'm just sharing with you. That's why this is so important. They didn't just throw a belt out there or a trinket. They didn't just dangle some pay-per-view points in front of these boys. The belt has nothing to do with it on Izzy's side. And I will just contend for you. He does his finest work when it's personal. People tell you don't make it personal, but it is personal. And the guys that can admit it and the guys that can thrive from that go to the top.
Adesanya said that. Beating Dricus to me means more than winning the belt back. Look, man.
I believe him.
When Adesanya went on his run, JLP, it was one of the most dominant runs that we have seen in a really long time. So the idea of getting the belt back may not be as exciting to him as it once was when he was trying to become the champion for the first time. But when he was defending this belt, I put a tweet out after he lost to Sean Strickland because I felt like people were unfairly attacking Adesanya. Oh, he lost. He's not that good. When he fought everyone. And this guy headlined so many pay-per-views in such a short period of time that I felt like he looked tired. And he looked like he needed time away from the spotlight because he got bigger than anyone we had seen in a long time. 5 title fights, 19 months. He was fighting so frequently that it felt like he needed time. He took time now, Chael, for the first time in his career, or at least since he got to the UFC. When you look at this time away, do you think that we see a better Stylebender? How much does this benefit him to walk away from the game? Because if you talk to most, by walking away, you come back, there's ring rust, there's all this stuff that you don't have, you got to deal with. Is this beneficial for the Last Stylebender to take this time away from the octagon?
That's the big question. I mean, that is the biggest thing. The fact that this is personal, the fact that he's driven, the fact that I believe him. I do not believe that this is hype. I don't believe it's about the belt. And I share that with you because history means something. Guys at that age that lose the belt, they don't usually get it back. History says if a younger guy takes the belt right now, if you fall in the rankings, you're not going to get that spot back. But there was a little bit more to it the night that Adesanya lost that belt. That wasn't the Izzy that I have ever seen in other competitions. That was an Izzy that knew in the first round this isn't going to be by night, and he grounded out anyway. He stood in there another 20 minutes knowing he was going to relinquish his title. There was a door, and he could have seen it, and no one would have, one of those bad nights, and he didn't take it. And then he did take the time off. And he got involved with Ngannou. He got involved with Ngannou's boxing career. Izzy's always been a great teammate. Guys like Dan Hooker, guys like Volkanovski, they speak about what a good teammate Adesanya is, that he's around, that he's sharing knowledge, even if his training is at that intensity. These are big deals. It turns out, by the way, that Dricus Du Plessis is a lot better than we knew that he is. It was only 2 Decembers ago. Dricus was on an undercard against Darren Till. It was the night. It was December 12th. It was the night, for perspective, that Glover was scheduled to rematch Prohaska. The fight ended up not happening, but it was Bo Nickal's UFC debut. And Dricus Du Plessis, who I thought was a French Canadian, that's how little I knew about him. At DDP, like GSP, I made this assumption. This is how little we knew about him, though. His 424 Twitter followers complained on a 5-minute basis. And he didn't say, I can beat, but he said, put me in there with Bo. That's my spot. I've been here. I've done this. I don't go to an undercard for a guy in my weight class that's debuted. It was very interesting stuff. Bo ended up coming off the card, and the squeaky wheel got the grease. But he went right from that fight, right from one time on pay-per-view to a #1 contenders fight, which, by the way, he was a 3-1 dog. He was not supposed to beat Robert Whittaker. He not only beat Robert Whittaker, he beat him in every aspect of that fight. He outstruck him, he outgrappled him, he outconditioned him. He's a lot better than we knew that he was. But then there was a face-off. There was a face-off that night with Israel Adesanya, and Du Plessis thought the moment was a little too big. And that's the truth. Whether he tells the story that way or not, he backed down in that face-off. But he backed down with the reservation, which was, I just need a little time. I got a couple of nagging injuries. I just need a little time. I will fight you, but I'm not going to fight you in August. And that's where you saw Sean Strickland step into the spot in the first place. But that part of the story is so important. Like, the boys know who are going to win. The boys come and put on an act, but they both got a pretty good idea of who's actually going to win that fight. In that moment, Dricus, I believe, thought it was Izzy. But now that time has gone by, now that his confidence is boosted, now that he has trained and prepared for him, now that he has seen Izzy get beat, I do think it's a different Dricus, and I do think Izzy, while being the favorite, and rightfully so, I think he's got a big problem on his hands come Saturday night.
I love the timeline.
That was a long diatribe, but I really want you to hear me out on that, because that timeline matters.
I got it. And it made all the sense in the world. And you're right. I just recall him on those undercards, because I was one of those guys that Dricus, he had to convince me. But who am I? Why do you have to convince me? Like, I'm just old retired fighter.
Are we saying Dricus? What'd you call? You say Dricus?
Dricus.
It's like Dricus.
His name is Dricus Du Plessis.
You're emphasizing the A. Drake, not Dricus.
Dricus Du Plessis. Dricus. I don't know. His manager tells me Dricus. So
DDP.
DDP. That makes it easier. He had to convince me how good he was. And reality was, you don't have to convince people when you shouldn't have to. But it was sometimes in the actions that he made and the way that he fought, you want to kind of talk about him as if he's not as skilled as he is. Because to us, Chael, as fighters, things are supposed to look a certain way. So when a takedown happens or a double leg, you're supposed to get your double leg. You're supposed to run your head across his back and put him down. You're not supposed to double leg, use your right foot to trip him behind the leg to make him fall straight down. Generally, when you take a double leg, you move him across the octagon. Dricus was kind of just dragging him to the floor. Dricus did an inside-out trip one time, and he went to the underhook side opposed to the overhook side. And I'm like, well, he doesn't know what he's doing, but it was working. And I was talking about his wrestling, so every time he fought, he would tell me, getting better, on DC. Getting better, on DC. And he always had those opportunities to tell me, I'm much better than you thought I was. Am I not? And finally, I realized, like, he's really good. I realized it when he beat Robert Whittaker, and then I realized it in the Sean Strickland fight. The guy's in phenomenal shape. He never gets tired. He is massive for the weight class. And all that awkwardness, I'm going to say it like awkward, right? Because it's not wrong anymore. I don't think it's wrong. I was judging it as wrong, GLP. It's not wrong. It's just awkward. And all that awkwardness plays into him being so hard to figure out and him having so much success. But when you look at Izzy, right? Izzy straight, bang, bang. Everything that we are taught when we start, even though we maybe can't replicate it, but we're supposed to throw things straight. Izzy does that. Izzy fights in a real upright stance. Dricus is moving, switching his feet. It's not wrong. We have two different styles at play in this fight. How in the world does this play out when you look at it, though, Chael? Because it would seem as though Dricus can take him down. It might not look like we want it to look, but he can't take him down. But Izzy would seem to hold the striking advantage. But how do you outstrike a guy that's not where you expect him to be because he fights in such a different way?
Yeah. No, that's a $1 million question, because you always have the intangible. You have who can make the other one quit, right? Like, ultimately, this is a matter of wills. We're going to get in there, and I'm going to let you know you don't want this as bad as you thought you wanted it. I've never seen Dricus quit. I've never seen Izzy quit. That's why I got to go back to his loss to Sean Strickland. Like, Izzy really showed himself. I know people that think they're great fighters, but it's always one way. They're winning every round. They're winning every scenario. That's not called fighting. That's aggression. A fighter is when it's coming back at you. Can you stay in the fire? And both of these guys have proven, yes, they can. And where that becomes so relevant is I don't think you have a striker versus grappler. Like, if you go look at DDP, one thing that a lot of people don't know about him, he was part of the South African national team for Greco-Roman. He never became their number one guy, but he participated in that, and he tried to be, and he went to their senior level open, and he went through their process and got as high as number 3, and then he went to Thailand, and he started learning striking. As a matter of fact, on that trip to Thailand, he grappled with a young man named Israel Adesanya, and he got the best of him. He felt him. The mask came off, right? It's a big deal when you finally put your hands on a guy. It can be a big deal all the way to a weigh-in when one guy decides to get physical with the other. You learn something even in that moment. And Dricus and Izzy came away with the same opinion, which was in that grappling and in those moments, Dricus at that time was the stronger of the two. Izzy's just argued, hey, listen, he never could have put me there if the coach didn't demand that we started there in the first place. And I'm sharing that because I don't believe that Dricus can go ground and pound him. I don't believe he can take Izzy down easier than Gatstone, easier than Yoel Romero, easier than Brunson. I think he's going to have to fight. And Dricus goes straight for it, and he wears guys down, and he makes them quit. And that's the one thing about Izzy I cannot say. No matter how bad of a performance I've seen from him, I've never seen that man quit.
Well, but then you watch Du Plessis and Sean Strickland, right?
Have you ever quit? Have you ever quit in a fight? I don't know, but have you quit in competition? Certainly you have in practice at some point.
I don't think that I've ever quit. But let me tell you one thing. When I was fighting Miocic, I was like trying to build my way back up, but it was like I couldn't move. And
in California,
to me, it felt like quitting. To me, it
in
felt
California
like quitting.
With the body shots?
In the body shots, then the right hand. I always knew you can't take the follow-up shot. He hit him with the body, and he caught me with one on top. And when I went down, my whole mind told me to get up, and my body didn't respond. And to me, I felt, I swear to God, Chael, for months, I questioned, did I quit? Did I actually lay it down? Did I take my lunch pill? I had to kind of remind myself that it just wasn't working. Because the only time I had lost fire was I was out completely. But because I wasn't out, and my body didn't take a single leg, I was like, did I actually quit? It's a horrible, horrible thing to deal with because then you're thinking yourself a quitter. It's unbelievable. Yeah. But Du Plessis showed that he can stand and trade with guys like Sean Strickland, and he did that to win the championship. But it was really, really close. I think that he's going to have to incorporate wrestling if he wants to be that Adesanya. Unfortunately, we have not seen anyone able to implement that game plan and do it effectively over a sustained period of time against Adesanya. It hasn't worked.
When I watched Dricus, a lot of the boys, a lot of the fellow fighters are saying that Dricus can't stand with them. They say that it's a big problem and Dricus is going to go down, that he's going to get clipped and he's going to go down. And fighters also like an expression. They like to say that MMA math doesn't work. Excuse me, DC. It works all the time. MMA math, a common opponent is maybe the most scientific thing we have.
Yes. In every sport, common opponent is the one.
That's right. And we've got Sean Strickland and we've got Robert Whittaker. Now, I couldn't really tell you who fought better against those athletes. Like DDP had his greatest performance ever against Whittaker, but Izzy made pretty quick work of him one time as well. And the boys, the fellow fighters are saying that it's a mistake for Dricus to stand. That's the one thing I'm not convinced of because he fights. It's very dirty. And I don't mean against the rules. It's like what you were talking about. It's very awkward. He's a brawler. He's a handsome guy. You don't think brawler out of him. He is. He is gritty and he is nasty. And I think he's got a good chin on. I think he can stand with Adesanya. Is that a great plan long term? I mean, guys like Alex Pereira, right? I mean, really good men have fallen in front of Adesanya, but I do think that there is something to be said for the grittiness within our champion. I think that he's got it. I think he's a little underestimated.
Yeah, he's a little bit underestimated, but as he said once, I don't throw in hope, I aim and fire. He's about as clean a striker as we have in the UFC. And interviewing Dricus when he became the champion was awesome. It was awesome to see how happy he was. And this dude was so happy. He went up there and kissed his coach on the mouth. I ain't never seen nothing like that in the octagon. He went kiss his coach right on the lips, man. I was like, wow, these dudes happy. Chael, the co-main event is
DC, can I ask you? Yeah. This is just between you and I. I'll make this super fast. Between you and I, because we haven't seen Izzy in a minute. If you were in your imagination, the best Izzy you've ever seen versus the best Du Plessis you've ever seen, who wins that fight?
Can't pick it because I'm calling the fight this weekend. I can't pick it.
It's a problem. Look, you see how that's close.
Yes, it's that close. But looking back on the best Izzy, looking back on the best Dricus, who I believe we saw against Robert Whittaker, unbelievable fight, man. It's going to be amazing. Look, Dan Hooker takes on Mateusz Gamrot this weekend. Dan Hooker is a guy that people love, Chael. Tremendous striker. And he has been in some wars and taken some of the best fighters to places that they didn't know they could go. Mateusz Gamrot would seem to be the worst possible matchup for Dan Hooker because of the wrestling and that grinding style that he implements. Hell, Mateusz Gamrot was in New Jersey with Dustin Poirier because that was the guy he was training with to help him prepare for Islam Makhachev, and we saw how well Dustin did at defending takedowns. How does Dan Hooker get this done this weekend? How does Dan Hooker fight his type of fight against a guy that's going to try to overwhelm him with pace and pressure?
When Frankie Edgar retired, that also retired Chael's career of having a favorite fighter. And so I've been on the look for my new favorite fighter. And I got to tell you, man, Dan Hooker is at the top of the pile. If you saw Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier, that was as close of an absolute war. That was on free TV. ESPN hosted it. It was 5 rounds. I mean, truly, that was like a Hall of Fame level fight that I'll remind you was a split decision. One judge said that Dan Hooker won. So when you talk about how can Dan Hooker win, we have seen him held down. But we've seen him held down by greats like Islam, where it was early and he was dry. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong type situation. I mean, Dan Hooker is a very rough guy. This is a guy that's had a broken arm before. Not only did he finish the fight, he conducted his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan with the broken arm and a smile on his face. So when you talk about how can he do it, I will concede he's got a big problem. He's got a big problem in dealing with that high-level grappling of Gamrot. But I'll tell you what, I think he's only got a problem for one round. I think if he can get it to the second round, that Gamrot's takedowns and his takedown output, it greatly diminishes. I think Dan Hooker really needs, because he's a fast starter. And that cost him against Michael Chandler. It's cost him in other fights. He needs to just slow down a little bit. Get him moving. Touch him. Move. Don't be afraid to hear that crowd reacting just a little bit. Get a few minutes in. And I think the odds do start swaying towards Dan Hooker, believe that or not.
You know, when you wrestle as much as Gamrot does, it will clearly fatigue you, right? At some point in the fight, it does fatigue you. But I think this man has done such a great job of training himself to use it as his option number 1, option number 2, and option number 3. Dan Hooker's going to have to defend takedowns. And what Dan Hooker can do to really help himself, Chael, is find all those weapons up the middle. That's one thing that fighters have realized and recognized lately in mixed martial arts. If you show things up the middle, uppercut, you show knee up the middle, you show all front kick up the middle, you show all those weapons, that deters the wrestler. Dan Hooker will be the longer guy. He needs to do those things right away, Chael. He's got to kick him in the stomach, right up the middle. He's got to lift his knee, showing him, if you level change, you might run into this knee. He's got to show him uppercuts. He's got to show him everything up the middle so that if he does level change, he has to pay for it. It's a tough fight for him, though, man. If I'm being completely honest, it's a tough fight also because of the wrestling. But Gamrot's the guy, right? Dan Hooker was the guy that was riding hot. He was the guy with all the popularity. He was the guy that was skyrocketing up the rankings, but he's not there anymore. He's not that guy no more. Is it risky for Gamrot to be fighting a guy outside of the top 10 in Dan Hooker, or does the value of his name still matter enough that it can propel him forward?
Gamrot got put in a tough spot. And what that spot was is he fought a very unpopular guy, and he fought a guy that wasn't over, and he fought a guy that wasn't ranked in the top 10, and that guy's name was Islam Makhachev. And that put him in a very tough spot where you can't understand how good Islam is until you understand how good Gamrot is, and then you go back and you watch that contest. And I just tell you, he then became a training partner. Like the highest name that you heard from Gamrot is that he was the guy that Poirier went to for preparation. And it was one of these things where I do feel like this is a major opportunity for Gamrot. I do think he's as good as the press club is. I just don't know that everybody knows that. You and I see it, but I'm just not sure that everybody else does. A win over Dan Hooker, not to mention an exciting win. But see, that's where the problem lies, DC. These guys know what you and I are saying. So when they go out and they try to be excited, when they try to get away from their own style, right? And it's one of those things, like a fighter needs to be very disciplined in the locker room. Like have all of these bright ideas, but right before you make that walk, look good next time. Tonight, just win. And you got to retell yourself that all the time. And Gamrot isn't enough of a veteran for me to assure you that he's going to do that. I do think he can be lured in to Dan Hooker's games. I do think that Dan Hooker plays head games as well as anybody in the sport. Not to mention, I got to tell you, the breakdown that you gave of Hooker versus Gamrot is going to be, I mean, you were basically describing Sean O'Malley versus Marab. It's exactly the same thing. It's exactly that same, like, it's exactly those knees up the belly. It's exactly those teeps to the belly to slow a guy down. It's got to be the same game plan. I mean, if anybody should really be watching this for ideas, it's Sugar Sean.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, big fight. I also point to one thing. Mateusz Gamrot, one of his greatest fights, Chael, was when he fought Arman Tsarukyan. Him and Arman Tsarukyan had an amazing fight inside the Apex, and that was because Tsarukyan and Gamrot can both wrestle so effectively that neither could get takedowns. So they were forced to stand and trade. And we saw in Gamrot on that night that he has the ability to fight anyone. He's powerful. He's dangerous. He's nasty. He can do it all. And he's going to have to do it all this weekend because I do believe that Dan Hooker will defend takedowns early. I do believe that Dan Hooker will make him fight in areas that he's not as comfortable. This will be a banger, man. I cannot wait to watch.
Is this funny? My son came home and he said to me, Dad, why did the chicken cross the road? And do you want to know the answer? I mean, this is like the age-old question. Do you want to know the answer?
Oh, yeah.
No reason, just an ordinary chicken. Yeah, right. That's funny. I don't totally know what it means. But like, that has been the age-old question for 40 years. Apparently, that's the answer. I accept that, by the way. I accept that answer. There's nothing special about the chicken crossing the road. Everything crosses the road. Dogs cross the road. The person cross to get to the other side. What do you mean? Just an ordinary chicken. That is apparently what the kids are saying in school. Is that funny? I think it's funny.
Very funny. I saw your boy just show up with a robe on. He looks very classy. Just know that he looks very, very classy.
Gamrot's going to take him down, and Gamrot's going to take Hooker down, and Hooker's going to get taken down. Oh, DC, who do you think's going to win the fight? Well, I can't say who's going to win the fight because I'm announcing it. I mean, you kind of said in all fairness. And by the way, when I asked you if you ever quit in a fight, why did you not ask me that? Did you feel like you already had the answer? Did you feel like I don't need to ask Chael? I've seen Chael.
I don't want to do that.
You don't know if I quit.
I've never seen you quit.
That's mental. You want to know? It might have looked like I quit, and you saw it wrong. Who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? Why didn't you ask me back if I have quit? Why didn't you ever ask me back? You want to know why I brought that up, by the way?
It's a very uncomfortable conversation. It's like an uncomfortable rivalry.
Well, yeah, but it's something that I actually might be able to teach you. I'm not proud of it, but I will share something with you. It's only a split second, DC. You lose your focus for a split second. For a split second, you want out, and you can't come back. You can't come back from that. And I just share with you, there are certain positions where you can sell that to the audience, and there's certain positions where you can't. I'm going back to Israel Adesanya. But you can't just sell it on your feet. You can't just pretend to be knocked out like Bruce Seldon did against Mike Tyson.
Knew how to quit? Got to tell you who knew how to quit?
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't get mad at me. Frank Mir. When Frank Mir would get finished, it always looked the exact same way. So he never really took much damage. It always kind of looked the same. So I think that he kind of figured it out.
Sure. No, it's not a bad example. And I mean, he was in there with some bruisers, right? Like he fought a lot of guys you're probably not going to want to go 25 minutes with in Frank's defense. But you're right. You've got certain positions. You go for your best hold. If they fail you now, it's not as though they're going to work later. But right, this is the psychology. These are the things that you go through. But I will share with you, I just haven't seen that from Izzy, and I haven't seen that from Dricus. That's why I have to go back to that deal, because it's a great intangible. Like, we can talk about who the better fighter is and who's quicker, but you can also just get in better shape. You can also just go Dan Gable 101 and wear that guy down. I mean, I find Cain Velasquez to be arguably the most intimidating combat athlete of all time. But that was the thing. I mean, behind his back, we call him Cardio King. I've never even been in the practice room with him. I'm in a state away, and I heard these things. I heard about this heavyweight that you can't slow down. And I just share that. I don't think those intangibles are here. I don't think one of these guys is going to get tired. I think one of these guys is going to relent. I think one of these guys is going to have to put the other man down. This is a fight, Daniel. There is nothing sportive about this. This is a fight.
Yeah. It's a fight. And I can't wait. I cannot wait. Hey, Chael, can I be honest with you, my brother? Can I be honest with you? You've lost it. You've lost your way, my guy. I can tell now you're a father. You're in your mid-40s, and you're raising kids, and you're happy in life. You've lost your edge. You've lost your edge because you literally just gave our Olympic team a little bit of a pass. I cannot believe that arm. Well, okay, you still look good. I cannot believe you gave them a pass, Chael. You gave them a pass. You want me to tell you why? You said, well, they did good. If I would have said in 2004, 8, when we kind of had that little bit of lull, 12, when we weren't getting medals, and we got 3 medals, a bronze, and a silver, 3 out of 6 guys placed, we'd have been like, that's not bad. We're on the right track. But it doesn't work whenever in 2020 Olympics you have Taylor win, you have Stevenson win, we got 4 medals and 9 medals overall as an Olympic team. Then we won the last 2 to 3 world championships as a team. This year we had the Olympic Games with no Russians, and then we don't go and compete. I don't, and it's hard, man, because I don't want to like shit on these. Or sorry, mess on these guys. Like I like these guys, I respect these guys. I know how hard it is to go medal, but I thought Kyle Dake was going to walk away with this thing, especially without the Russian being there. I thought that Kyle Snyder would walk away with a medal, right? The Russian's not there. Spencer Lee, I thought was going to win. Can't be mad at him. He made it to the finals, lost the competitive match against a great guy. Zane Rutherford went 0-1. The girls wrestled great. Our Greco team didn't win a match. They didn't win one match. Chael, expectation is earned. And that team earned the expectation of being what could have possibly been the greatest Olympic team ever because of what they had done in years prior. And for Aaron Brooks, his inexperience cost him in the worst moment. But if David Taylor's there, it seemed like David was going to win a gold medal. So our expectation for Aaron was you beat the man, you got to go beat the man now. So yeah, I was a little disappointed in the performance. Obviously, I know how hard it is, being that I couldn't do it. But yeah, man, I just expected more from such a great Olympic team.
The gentleman who beat Brooks, the gentleman who won it there, D'Agostino, I believe he represented Bulgarian. Did represent Bulgaria, Georgia. David Taylor, when he last wrestled him, David Taylor was ahead 7-0 when David Taylor pinned him. And so I hear what you're saying. I think maybe here was my pushback, because you have earned the right more than I have to an opinion. But if I can share a secondary opinion, if you say that the team didn't do well, we usually are deferring right to the coaching staff. Okay, how do we prepare and how do we train? And I do understand the outcome was a little bit short. Kyle Snyder maybe specifically. But to go back to Kyle Snyder, I thought the performance was outstanding. You know, he closed the gap on the gentleman that won it. He only made it 30 seconds with him last year. And all of a sudden, you know, it's a real dogfight. And Kyle's in on the legs. I think Kyle fakes a little bit too much. I don't know why he's faking. So sometimes he'll fake and touch the leg. If you can touch the leg, I don't know why he doesn't grab that. But he studied that guy, and he didn't know he would. The gentleman was representing.
Did a better job.
Yeah, I just thought he did. I thought he wrestled hard. I thought the conditioning was there for everybody. Kyle Dake, you know, he finds himself in this match with Japan that wasn't supposed to be there. He thought he was going to have Chimizo. He regroups, has that match. They put 32 points up on 12. When a guy needs a score, you count on Kyle Dake. I mean, when the chips are down, put that guy in. He can find a point unlike anybody I've ever seen.
Well, his third place match, he showed that. Went beast mode, got it done. So there were some really good things, man. I thought the girls wrestled well. Amita Lohr, Sarah Hildebrand, Kennedy Blades, 3 girls in the finals. Helen Maroulis, who retires now, was a bronze medalist. They wrestled tremendous. And the team will be back. It's just annoying because now I got to hear from those guys, right? Islam and Habib, like all the Dagestanis, 5 Dagestanis win and all this stuff. And then Japan has 9 gold medals. Japan had 9 gold medals, man, across the 3 styles. That's actually crazy. But chill, we're starting to lose connection. Our time across the world is starting to bother.
All right.
The way that we can get together.
I don't want to go. I don't want to go because I want to ask you. Kyle Dake hasn't officially retired, and neither is Jordan Burroughs. Could you just please give me your opinion on that? Are they going to, or are these guys going to come back?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for these guys to hold off the country for the next 4 years. In Los Angeles, I think we're going to see a lot of different guys. The one person I think might be able to hold them off because he's so far ahead is Kyle Snyder. He's so far ahead of the rest of the country, he could continue. But I mean, Dake with Nolf and all those guys, it'll be tough for him to keep those guys off for another 4 years.
Sure.
Guys, Chael and I are done for the week. Chael's filming a movie right now, and I am in Perth, Western Australia. So we will see you guys next Monday for a brand new episode of Good Guy, Bad Guy. You can catch us wherever you get your podcast, ESPN MMA YouTube, ESPN2, ESPN Plus, and all kinds of different places. Because people just love Chael and I. They just love the good guy, the bad guy. But Chael Sonnen, I'm Daniel Cormier. Until next time, guys, peace.
You mentioned Japan's 8 gold medals, but you never mentioned nobody scored a single point on Chael Pete.